Welcome back to the Peak Sports Psychiatry podcast, where we explore the intersection of mental health, high performance, and the human stories behind sport. Today's episode is one we've been looking forward to with immense gratitude. We're joined by two people who have transformed unimaginable loss into a national movement of hope, healing, and real change in the world of collegiate athletics. Kym and Mark Hilinski are the co-founders of Hilinskis Hope, a nonprofit created in honor of their son Tyler, a talented quarterback at Washington State University who tragically died by suicide in 2018. In the wake of that loss, the Hilinskis launched a mission to raise awareness, fight stigma, and to ensure that no student athlete ever feels alone or unsupported when it comes to their mental health. Since then, their foundation has become a leading force in the conversation around athlete well-being, partnering with universities, speaking with teams across the country, and helping drive policy changes that bring mental health to the forefront. But what's perhaps most powerful is that their message isn't one of tragedy, it's one of action, one of connection, one of hope. We're so honored to have them here with us today. Kym, Mark, welcome to the podcast.
So,
Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having us.
We're thankful to be here. Yeah.
Well, so for those who may not know the full story, can you share a little bit about how Hilinskis Hope came to be?
So Tyler passed January 2018. It's been over 7 years, and we had no idea that he was struggling. He didn't share with anyone that he was thinking of taking his own life. He didn't share whatever he was going through with anyone. His best friends were his brothers and us. And we thought, okay, if Tyler was struggling and didn't know how to reach out and ask for help, or was afraid or embarrassed, or scared about losing his playing time, how many other Tylers are out there? And we didn't want to lose another Tyler, to have another student struggle, to have a family, a football team, coaches go through the pain that we have lived with every single second of every single day since we lost him. And so we thought, okay, we put purpose to our pain. And we formed Hilinskis Hope soon after we lost him. And that really has given us so much hope, as we face each day without him.
Purpose to our pain. I love that. That's powerful. So starting a nonprofit in the midst of grief is incredibly brave. So what helped give you clarity or strength to say, this is what we need to do?
It's funny, people say all the time to us, or Kym, Mrs. Hilinski, I don't know how you're so strong. How do you keep doing it? How do you keep sharing Tyler's story over and over again? And you use the word strength. I've always used the word love. Right. And so I have my favorite shirt is I'm in love with 4 men, right? My husband and my 3 sons. And that's the truth. And so when you lose someone, especially your dear son, what do you do with that love? Right. And so we've taken that love that we have for Tyler and we've just keep loving him. And this is what, I love him more today than I did 7 years ago. And I think it's that love for our son, for our student athletes that keeps pushing us forward. And sometimes we're exhausted and just want to not get on a plane or, just fall into bed. We just think about Tyler and our student athletes and we don't want to lose another one.
And you've touched a lot of people. Well, so along those lines, what do you hope every student athlete who's listening to this conversation right now, what do you want them to hear about your organization?
We want them to first hear that suicide's preventable. Right. So if you think about this story, we've given this Tyler talk over 350 times now on campus, another 30 or 40 times during COVID, over Zoom. And when you get that much data, there are things that stand out and things that match up and all that. And so you go through this process and what Kym and I do for that hour, it's an audio-visual deal where we've got some videos and a couple of signposts along the way, but it's really an hour's worth of stories. And where this came from was really the night we flew up to Pullman, the night after Tyler died, we flew up to Pullman. And one of the many things that we did, they had a memorial service up there, sort of impromptu. And I don't remember exactly how anymore, but I'd asked the coaches if I could talk to the team. And the team was there. If you think January, most of the coaches were gone recruiting. Football's on its own, they're doing their workouts on their own and stuff. They have oversight with one. There was one coach that was allowed to stay. And then, of course, all the rules around lifting coaches and stuff. So we got in the weight room, and it's the weirdest thing. I were so completely shocked, sad and shocked. And you don't even know how to explain that anymore, right? Then you guys know, you work with the outcomes. But it's really, for us, it was really important to understand what we thought. It was important to understand why, right? So you're talking about a kid that on the things we normally measure, right? He loved his coaches. He was not a portal guy. He knew his chance was coming. He was a fantastic athlete, but just from anybody's recollection, he was the sweetest, kindest. Off the field, he was a mama's boy. On the field, the most hyper competitive kid I've ever seen. So with that, we go up there and I said, can I talk to these guys? And I was sort of pushed or compelled to say to them, this is what I said, was don't be mad at it. And I don't even know why, to me, I share this, when we talk like this, where we have a little bit more time, a little less structure, to me, that's a form of stigma still, like even in my own mind, what do I care what these guys think of? My son's gone. They didn't help him, or at the time, you're just, it's black and white. He's gone. And so we had that visit and we talked a little bit. And I think just as parents, you come to realize these are 18, 20-year-old kids that are broken, devastated, confused. And so we absorbed all that in the 2 hours we were with them and said, if Tyler was going through this, if that had been Tyler there and somebody else were here, like, what can we do? And that's sort of the germination from a Tyler talk. And the point was this, we read and heard and sent everything from Kevin Love to Michael Phelps to any of the really early adopter professional athletes, Olympic athletes, collegiate athletes now talking about their mental health. And those stories are powerful. Tyler doesn't get to tell his, and there's so many people in Tyler's camp that clearly can't. So we didn't want to speak for him necessarily, but we were trying to be as transparent as possible. We understand kids' fascination with this topic, both from I want to get better, I want to help my teammate, my family, my friends, to I'm scared to death of it because I don't understand it. And our idea was to share what had happened best we could with these guys. Take them through the ugliness, the points of pain that we don't understand, and then share with them the breadcrumbs we found over the last 7 years, so that maybe in the future, tonight while we're talking, or tomorrow or next year, one of these stories compels you to take a further step with a friend or for yourself. And so we've been doing those, ever since. But the message we lead with is, this is a sad story. It's hard for us to talk about. 350 times you think we didn't have a tear left, and it doesn't matter. It can be story B, it can be story D, it comes when it comes, and we deal with it best we can. We're not professional speakers, but we understand the value of getting anybody together for an hour and want to make that as informational as possible. So the start of it is simply that we want you guys to hear this shouldn't have happened. There's ways that we could have prevented this. And so we want to share our pain and our story with you so that we have hope at the end, right? The goal of this whole thing isn't to make them sad about, there's some sad parents crying about their kid again. There's a lot of us out there like this. The point was to simply say it shouldn't have happened. And God, I wish somebody else did this before Tyler died and all those things. But then where are we if we're not the ones doing it? So that's the point. I think the message we're trying to give them loud and clear at the very beginning.
Yeah, Mark, that's so powerful. And to Kym's point, you're leading with love. And the way you're describing it, you're talking about how would you talk to Tyler if he was there in the room? Leading like you're talking to Tyler. How's your message received? Do you feel like it's received more when you're with a group or with a team like you've been doing versus talking to individuals?
Yeah, individuals, we don't really talk to individuals too much. It's usually, we'll talk to one person. We will go anywhere. And we've always said, just if one person can hear our story and it changes their life or helps them in some way, that's great. But typically it's students, student athletes, coaches. What we love is when the whole administration is there, the staff, the ADs, their staff, the athletic trainers. So when they show up and the student athletes look down the road, they see their head coach over there, their assistant coach, the AD. And so Mark and I do look apparently a lot like their parents, right? And so when they see us up there crying, and like Mark said, we don't We don't mean to make them cry. It's just a sad story, but they can relate. They see themselves a little bit in Tyler, or they see their parents in us, right? And they hear Tyler's story and our journey, and it really opens up their heart. And Mark can elaborate on this more, but what the mental health staff that's always there, because we always have to have someone present. We're not mental health professionals, and it's very important to us that someone's there. But they say, you can hear a pin drop. You got 300 student athletes, coaches, and staff sitting there. They're not on their phones. They're all leaning in and listening. And it's powerful, it's humbling, and we're just very grateful to do it.
And that organizational buy-in, I mean, that's huge from a high level, from coaching. You know, Dr. Allen and I were talking about multidisciplinary team approach to wellness and mental health. You're talking about decreasing stigma for suicide. We know that suicide, it's not just something you see with depression. It's a symptom of mental illness, sure. But what have you seen since 2018? What kind of gains have we made in the college landscape for mental health and within other things, legislation? Things that make sure that we're decreasing suicide. So we have a goal of zero suicide. What have you seen since then?
It's one of the hardest things to measure, right? So we have a number of ways we do it. The most common is after those talks, we started with a question and answer period, save 5 minutes for whoever did it. And that's sort of a theme too, right? There's a difference between privacy and stigma. If you're not telling me that you need help because you're worried about your playing time on the team or your position, of authority or ranking and all that, if that's why you're not getting help, that's in my vocabulary, that's more stigma. If you have bipolar 2 diagnosis, we're not asking you to stand up and wait, hey, look at me. So navigating that was tough at the beginning. What ended up happening just very naturally was as we unplugged the thumb drive and the HDMI cables and thanking the people that brought us there and stuff, in a little group, there'll be a little line, half a dozen kids will wait back. And the pie chart on that is pretty simple. A third of them want to talk about their sister or their brother or family member. 20% of the time they want to talk about themselves, and they want to tell us, thanks for coming because I'm better off now, not because you're here, but because of all these other things that I've done or had the opportunity to do. But I know not everybody has that. So I think the story you're sharing gives my teammates and my fellow student athletes a lot of hope. And then the third is a grab bag, right? And I never wanted to write a book, but there are so many stories anonymously, but the stories are so telling in a single data point sometimes. And I won't waste all your time on those here, but the feedback we get from the kids is this is somehow different. We encourage them to be championship caliber athletes if that's what they want to do. You don't have to take the week off if you're having a bad day. I think we got early on, there was some question in the coaching community. We later found out that, oh my God, yes, we're going to let them come in and talk, but what are they going to say? What if they get up and tell my team that running, for 3 hours in the morning till you throw up, here's your get out of running card from Hilinskis Hope. And what balanced all of this for us in a very actual fact was we have Ryan. Ryan was just starting his collegiate journey after when he was a senior in high school when Tyler passed. He was his junior at the end of it, but he had his senior year left. And so we fully understood both. Let me tell you, it was a difficult concept to have a discussion with. Ryan was extremely mature about it and handled it extremely well. And we've been supportive of him ever since. So I think once that was sort of established that we weren't going to get in there and say anything that would be objectionable to them, then we got free reign. And I don't know, guys, I've heard it before. I tend to put it down and they'll say it all, you can hear a pin drop and the kids talk about it weeks after you're gone and all this stuff. And we always say, but it's the topic. Mental health is a super important topic. And then we get feedback that says we've had parents talk about their kid's suicide in front of the same people and we don't get the same response. And I think it's a combination of things, none of which have to do with us. It's the circumstance, right? So you have a Division I athlete that seemingly has the world in front of him, right? Got his little girlfriend, got a little money in the bank, got a car, doing good in school, likes his coaches, loves his teammates, right? And he's performing at the top of the game. And now he's got 2 full years to just make hay with it. And now he's gone 2 weeks after his bowl game. So the story begs a lot of questions that those kids won't ask, but they'll hear 85% of the answers in this talk. And we share those with them. Again, we started off by going, it's just me, Kym, Ryan, and Kelly, Chloe, and a handful of us. But every day we're pulling for student athletes, whether that's, helping our friends on Capitol Hill, if that's building new module sets, if that's doing our Tyler Talks, whatever. And so, when you feel I got nothing, I've got nobody. My parents aren't going to talk to me. I can't talk to them. You get that group of folks, they have us, right? As abstract as that is for them, there's somebody voting for them, pounding the pavement for them, thinking about them. And I think that's the first sign of you're not alone. And so we like to emphasize that. And then we take you through, we have to tell you a little bit about Tyler, or it doesn't make sense, what kind of kid he was and stuff. So we do that very quickly. And then we walk you through a handful of stories. And we won't story tell, but maybe, the first story in this whole thing is the one we get a lot of feedback on. And I think it's just because of the position in it, but it's a really important one. And I'd love your guys' I won't take you through the dramatics of it. But so after Tyler passed, we had a memorial service there that the kids put on, a couple hundred kids, and crying and lights and just hugging each other and stuff. Then we did one down in Southern California for him, family and friends, 1,000 people. They flew the team down, that kind of thing. So big gymnasium. We all talked. At the very end, we're all crying. We're all thanking people for coming. There's pictures everywhere. There's video, all that stuff. And as I'm the last one to talk, and I'm, get home safe, whatever you tell people. And I see up in the corner where the team is that Tyler's roommate, CJ Dimry, this beautiful kid, 22 years old, he's graduating. He stands up and starts making his way down to the stage. Now there's 1,000 people. So you don't notice it so much, but I knew that CJ was just like Tyler. Like, I've known the kid for 4 years and I've heard 50 words, right? He's just quiet as a church mouse. And I think in my head, I'm going, what? That doesn't make sense that he's doing this, right? So that sort of caught my attention. By the time he gets up there, he just pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, you mind if I ask you a question?" And I take the kids through a longer buildup of this, but the point was, he arrived at the stage as shaky as possible, right? He was very just sad and nervous and upset and all those things. And the first thing he said, "Hey, Mr. Hilinski, I don't know, but do you know I lost my mom to cancer, when I was young?" And now, we did know that, right? We've been with this team for 3.5 years. We know that kind of stuff. And then he hits me sort of before I can stop nodding, "I do know that. Did I say something that upset you, in this whole thing?" No. He's waving me off. No, that's not it. He goes, "Did you know I was going to counseling? I was in treatment in Pullman for the last couple of years." Not that I didn't know, not that I should know. I just didn't know. Yeah. And I'm listening to him, and he basically goes into a more detailed version of this. He goes, "Well, I've been going to counseling." He tells me where it's at. Pullman's a little town, so he sort of describes the whole thing. And he said, "And Tyler used to take me to every appointment." And I said, "What?"
CJ didn't have a car either, he actually said, I don't have a car, right? And Mark was like, I was ready to give him Tyler's car if he needed a car, but it was a segue into sharing.
He was just sort of upset about it. Uh-huh. And so I said, "Well, I'm glad to hear that. Obviously now my brain's starting to go, why wasn't Tyler in this doing the same thing?" And so he said, "Yeah, Tyler would pick me up, whatever, didn't have a car from practice or library or whatever, drop him off." And he goes, "Then Tyler, we didn't know any of this, right? So Tyler would go get food, pizza or tacos or whatever, come and wait for me. I'd get out of my appointment. We'd sit in his car for an hour sometimes and talk about the appointment." He said many times it had nothing to do with football. It was my girlfriend or folks or whatever. I said, how did that go?" And he goes, "I keep going. It's okay. I get it." And so this is his question. He said, "Mark, he was 20 feet. I can't even do it with you guys. He's 20 feet in CJ's mind. Sorry. He was 20 feet from a door he sat in a car and told his best friend, kind of helps, whatever. Kids, they can't give anything too much credit, but I thought it was super telling. He goes, "He took me 20 times. I still go. It must help." So I think, okay, why didn't he ask me? That was his question. Why didn't he ask me? Tell me. All of us are asking the same question. So that's the story. And then I share with them that a year after that, Kym and I are in the middle of wherever, Montana or something, and we're up in a little hotel, and I'm doing my notes for the talk, and I'm sort of saying to myself, "Tyler, why?" And I knew then and know now, I know it's hard. I know it's impossible, in fact, but I'm asking anyway, why didn't you tell us? Could you just have given us a shot to help just by mentioning it to, and you guys, I share with the guys this. I start the whole talk out by saying, if you don't remember anything from this talk, I hope you remember one thing, and that is you don't need a tragedy or something dramatic in your life to ask for help. Tell them the story. And then I said, this is what I think. That night, I ran and got Kym. I'm like, I wasn't hearing voices or anything. It just came to me. This is what Tyler would have likely said. Dad, his mom died. Of course he needs help. What's wrong with me? I got everything. You guys are here. My brothers are awesome. And I can't tell you how many times the kids talk about that. Like, yeah, I just don't, because Kym hears it more than I do. I don't want to be a burden to anybody. You're sending your stipend checks to your home. You're working on the side. You're trying to manage your personal life, getting crushed on social media when you lose and never credit when you win. I know how hard that is. And you don't want to ask somebody for help.
And when they're students first, right? Before they're athletes. I mean, they're just spinning plates. So sorry.
For me, that's a big part of this message, is to say, listen, there's no barometer of how sick you are to ask for help. Right? You guys will tell them, guys, I don't think medication's the right route, pharmacological counseling, if that's the case, but you're not going to kick them out. You're not sick enough. I've had sick people. You're not sick. You know what I mean? That's the embarrassment factor we have heard in 300 different ways and times and stories from kids that stop them from going. Now, I know the stats. They go once, they never come back. They try apps, they never go. We haven't solved any of that. But I do think that first one, and if you think of our position, Tyler never told anybody, never left a note. This is a kid that texts us twice, 3 times a day. He didn't have a problem communicating. So we want them to hear it. We want them to always remember that just like you take care of bumps and bruises in the training room, you got to take care of your mental health.
Oh, let's take a beat. That was powerful. There's no way around it. Thank you very much for sharing that. A very personal story. It will resonate with all of our listeners for sure. From these talks that you've done countless times since the tragic loss, how can we move the needle beyond just raising awareness? Like, y'all have done some legislative work. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like, what are some of the wins you've had in the policy world?
So we were supportive of our fellow nonprofits out there that are doing the policy work. We've gone to DC, 2 or 3 times, and, marched to Capitol Hill and down hallways and have spoken with our legislators. We haven't actually created any legislation. We have created different things, and Mark can share those with you. But we were just in DC last weekend, but I was running a marathon. That's a whole different story.
That still counts. I love it.
But anyway, so we haven't really been on the policy route, but we're always there to support whatever mental health for student athletes.
And it's helpful. These guys, Morgan's Message and The Hidden Opponent and
Katie Save.
ESPN did a beautiful E60 on her yesterday, Katie's story. Their story is about the legislative process because of Katie's personal story. Fantastic. I love what they did in California. I know they're trying to federalize that legislation, but in the what's our group called?
The Alliance.
The Alliance. So we, as Kym was saying, so from a policy standpoint, what we do is lend, the Hilinskis Hope brand, for what that's worth, and our personal version of the stories to just make that part of the ask. So we don't have to know Pennsylvania's 1642, you know what I mean, for that part of it. And so I don't want to trivialize it at all. In our meat and potatoes world, we're still in the awareness, stigma reduction, providing, hope and resources. And on the resource side, this is where we spent a lot of time in front of legislators, if you can imagine. One of the things that we learned very quickly in this is if you're an expert weightlifter or female soccer player or runner, golfer, whatever, you know how to have that locker room conversation, right? What in football, it's what defense are they running? What's the playbook look like? All the John Gruden terminology. He loves all that stuff, They're great at it. The minute you get outside of that and they don't understand something, they just tend to back off a little bit. Obviously, not everybody. Our experience is if they feel a little bit embarrassed, is it depression, anxiety? Is it the same thing? I didn't know bipolar had 3, they get really nervous really quick, so they tend to step back. And so we wanted to focus some of our very first, we took our money and placed a bet, if you will, and built some educational modules for the high school group. And the high school group, because what we see in college and are told by the players, go to my high school. We're just life-saving in college. If we want to try to change a behavior, let's try to, right? So we went out and worked with Dr. Wyrick, Dr. David Wyrick, and Stephen Hebard, Dr. Hebard, both from University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and they helped us build a 6-module set. One on stigma, what it's like to go to therapy, how to be an upstander.
You would not believe what we hear from the student athletes too, as far as what they think therapy looks like. I mean, they're just, what was the
Yeah, do you still have to wear a blindfold was one of the questions.
Wearing a blindfold on a couch while somebody takes notes.
So
Yeah.
just very quickly, the reason I even bring that up is we didn't know what to do. We understood that. We knew that the schools, would be interested in those modules and so forth.
Because there's just not enough of you. There's just not enough psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals.
Even if there were, Tyler didn't not call somebody because he didn't know where to call, or that somebody said they'd call back and didn't call back. He never engaged. And so how do we get you to engage? Well, maybe one way is to share about how normal this stuff is. And so with those modules, one of the guys that saw one of the many Tyler talks was a lobbyist in Alabama. And he said, Mark, we have so much money in the mental health space and the opioid settlement dollars that we're going to allocate some of that to mental health and so forth. You should come down and this would be a great thing for our high school kids. So we embarked on that journey 3 years ago. The state was awesome. I mean, this is the state of Alabama. You talk about championship caliber sports state. Alabama's as good as many and better than most, and some would say. Coach Saban set an unbelievable example. All these things, they're doing it. They did a huge pilot 3 years ago, and we just ended up on their line item budget for 2026 to provide this. And the kicker was we did a pre and post survey to the modules just to give us some sort of data sense, and the positive leaning data in some cases startlingly so, with tens of thousands of records, of which 6,000-7,000 of the kids filled both of them out. The questions were arranged such that the answers would tell us if they were more capable of asking for help on their own, if they had any deep-seated stigma about talking to people about it, that kind of stuff. And I would just share that the data clearly suggests that if you hold out just for the modules, that it's having a positive impact. And so these guys do all kinds of things on TV and online and all these things, but closed doors, they're trying to help kids survive. They want to knock down, they want to zero out, right, the suicide in their high schools. And so that's our experience, is working with them on that level, at the educational level, if that makes sense. It's not necessarily, although we will support any of the bills that make sense and need our help at the same time.
And I think Kym touched on it earlier, is very powerful. It stuck with me, which is, there's not enough of you guys. There's not enough resources. That's why Mark and I are in this and committed to the same mission. How do we get the right resources to the right people at the right time? But if you don't ask the question because you're afraid of the answer, then how far are we getting? I wonder what it is. You've talked to so many athletes and coaches and administrators and Coach Saban. What is it about athletes and young athletes, high-level athletes, that make them more vulnerable, that make them less inclined to ask for help or, seek out help? Are you guys seeing that as a trend and, increased stigma in this population of athletes rather than the opposite?
So we have, thousands and thousands and thousands of student athletes. And what we have found is these men and women have been playing their sports since they were 4 years old, right? And they learned how to grind through, a tough game, a tough practice, grind through maybe a minor injury, right? And so they've always thought that is such a strength, right? To just keep pushing and just keep pushing. So when they get to that, that high level elite athlete right there, I think that vulnerability, that they're afraid to reach out and ask for help, just is all related to back when they were little and playing, and they thought if they reached out and asked for help, that would look like they were weak and not strong, right? But we've learned, over the years that, and you guys know this, we're not, telling you anything new, is that reaching out for help is a strength. It's not easy to do, right? Especially when their playing time is on the line, when maybe some of the coaches think like, she's not a leader, I can't have her as a team captain. It's just.
Well, Kym does
Yeah.
does a beautiful job in the Tyler Talk around this idea that about your identity, and if you go, we've met so many kids and, hi, I'm Mark Hilinski, and they'd say, hi, I'm Tyler, the quarterback. And in any other world, you don't, hey, I'm the VP of engineering. I didn't ask you,
Mm-hmm.
So you that's such a major issue that we see all the time, that you are who you are. What you play is what you do. It's not who you are. And we asked ourselves, with the kids and stuff, and it's, to me, it's pretty simple. When you say, oh, I live and breathe this stuff, and I live and sleep at the gym, I do all the, you're setting yourself up to say, I can't need help because I'm already the best I can be. I'm already better than all my peers. Now I'm at the collegiate level. And if I've fooled everybody to this point, I'm certainly not going to let them know now by asking a bunch of dumb questions. The problem is, as everybody knows, not all mental health issues result in suicidal ideation, which results in suicide. And so it's a very, we try to share with them the same thing, which is if the thing that's under attack is your brain, and the brain helps you make decisions, and your decision making has been called into question by your teammates, by your coaches or others, sleeping too much, not eating enough, if that's partying more than you normally do, those are worthwhile questions. They're not just floating around on the internet. They're worthwhile questions to sit and expect an answer from. Not just, hey, how you doing? No, hey, I've noticed, you've been late twice now. You've never been late in 4 years. I just want to, until you can safely rule out that mental health isn't the cause or part of the cause, and make it really comfortable for them, which we tell them, don't do stuff like that. If you want to be taken seriously, if you want to be a leader, and I'm the last guy to give you advice, but let's make it easy to talk about, for our teammates to talk about this stuff, which we already know it's difficult. And they all tell you to their face. In fact, they'll help a teammate way faster than they'll help themselves, right? Yes, we'll get behind that, So I think it's in their identity. I think it's one of the big messages that Kym gives them. Hey, I want to show you Tyler playing football because he's smiling and happy, not because he's a football player, but that's what my son did. He could have been a motorcycle rider, commercial airline pilot, who knows? But this is what he does, not who he is.
And you're asking those questions as a person. It's not, hey, Sam, the baseball player, how are you sleeping? No, how are you sleeping? I want to know how you're doing as a human being. And I think, when these players have 12 games in a season or 162 games in a year, they're so used to that identity, and you kind of brought up a little bit of an imposter syndrome that exists out there as well in the minds of these professional or high achieving athletes. Is there a relief that you see though when they can let their guard down and they can say, hey, this is how I'm really doing, or I can tell my teammate? Is there a positive story there where you've seen some athletes kind of drop that identity that they hold so tightly and really open up?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's way too many stories, positive stories, which there can never be enough positive stories, right? Here's one story I'll share with you, and Mark has a few as well. But so we go to a big school down in the South, and we know the coach pretty well, and
Football coach.
And he as we're packing up, we do our Tyler Talk, and he comes running back in the room, and he says, Mark and Kym, I need you, please, right away. So we run out the door, follow him down the hallway into a smaller conference room. And in that conference room is gigantic football player, right? And he's crying very hard. And next to him is his position coach, crying just as hard. And so we all hug and
he had asked for us.
Yeah, he said,
he had asked us
I want to talk to Mark Kym. And so what came out of his mouth, and Mark said this word before, is I've been struggling with my mental health my entire life, but I never wanted to be a burden to anyone, right? And you just hear those words and it takes just the air out of you, right? And so that day, they got on the phone and they called his mom. She had no idea that he was struggling, or he called his mom. And then they scheduled a counseling appointment with him. Was it that day?
That afternoon.
That afternoon. Mark is so great. He still texts and keeps in touch, with a lot of, because they just, I don't know why.
Not a lot,
Yeah.
a half a dozen, but yeah.
To me, that's good. But so he's now a coach on the team, and he's doing very, very well. And that's just
it's a very pointed story of, we had a Tyler talk in the middle of, towards the end of it, the young man struggled so hard that he needed support, and they took him to get support. First of all, there's so many of these, right? The first thing is the coach didn't throw him out of the meeting and call him names or which sounds ridiculous, but it happens still. But took care of him, and then his coach was in there with him. They're holding hands like this across the table, right? Again, the point was just the connection. Like, this was so hard for this kid. He threw the crying and said, he just said, I asked you guys, because we kind of, we're like, we don't do this. We're not qualified. And he said, I just wanted you to know that I've been trying to do what he's about to do for a long time. And that was just the little bit on that scale, you just tap it in his favor just enough that he said, screw it, I'm going to try. I'm going to tell my coach. He couldn't even get through it, started crying. The other guy hugs him. They go in another room, and his treatment begins, and that's happened more than once. It's not a goal. It's not like we're trying to get kids to crack or break or do any of that. There's no stress or tension in the conversation. It's a sad story, one that we're trying to turn into hope.
And so what we see more, because when we go to these universities and campuses across the country, high schools too, we see that the stigma really hits our male athletes very hard. And not that our female athletes aren't struggling as well too. And we've lost way too many of our incredible female collegiate athletes. But there's something about being a man that, you don't show your emotions, right? You toughen up, rub some dirt on it. All that kind of, those stupid phrases are just ridiculous. But sadly, they just were raised with that, right? That generation. And I do think it's changing. It's just, we have a lot more work to do.
What a cool full circle moment for your program. You go in, you give a Tyler talk, a kid is recognized and actually goes to seek help, gets better, becomes a coach, and now is starting to help his own players, and is a psychologically minded coach, so the system's gotten better. Well, I mean, y'all are, of course you're qualified at talking about this kind of stuff. Like, give yourself some credit here. This is amazing work that you're doing. You basically have helped tilt it in the right direction for this conversation. But as Tommy and I, the kind of work we do, proactive, preventative kind of mental health, we like to start the conversation, destigmatize the system, ask the questions, the hard questions off the beginning as part of just the normal pre-participation exam, taking out that preseason physical concept. It's not just physical, it's the whole body, right? And then we check in periodically, asking those questions about sleep and whatnot, not because it's on a checklist, but it's because we actually care about the person. And it's that relationship that's built that really matters. So I know I'm preaching to the choir back to you, but I want to go do 3 push-ups right now.
3 is perfect. Go do
it. Hey, Mark, can I curse on this podcast?
You can, but we're going to edit it out.
Well, okay. So what I was going to say is Mark's getting into what is the role of a psychiatrist. And you probably haven't seen a psychiatrist or 2 psychiatrists who are interested in sports who want to do this work. When shit hits the fan, you want to have a psychiatrist there to really be available for disposition and treatment planning, especially when there's medication involved, but really part of that team, that multidisciplinary team, psychologists, coaches, trainers, everybody who's going to recognize those early symptoms that you were talking about earlier. What do you think about psychiatry as a profession, and how do we do a better job of promoting your message and being available to more athletes? We talk about universal screening, we talk about education and decreasing stigma just like you do. What can we do to help?
Well, you can elaborate on this, but we heard a story 3-4 years ago that someone needed to see a psychiatrist in this state, and the closest psychiatrist, 3 counties over?
3 counties in 8 months, for initial exam. So the big wait list, I think, right? So this, when we say we're not professionals. We mean it because we have so much. We work with you guys
So much
all day,
respect for what you do.
and we know the education, we know the time, and we know that you don't get rich off of this. Starting out treating athletes like this is built for them. This process that. So what we've tended to do in our own way is try to support that. A couple of things. One is we tell them up front, and probably more true of psychologists, but it's a little bit of a personality contest. If you don't jibe with your doc, I know you're not going to believe this, and I know you're cynical at 19, but they will be happy to find somebody that does, right? Like that's the beginning. Like we're trying to share things that are not personal, but about the process that they should expect. Things like that. Like if it doesn't work out, the guys, whatever the reason. Tell me another place that does that. The brake shop. You don't take your car and, oh, I don't like the way he thought. So let's start with the industry. We're built for this stuff. Number one. Number two, and again, this is two people or one company's data points on it. There's still a lot of drug use on our college campuses. It's changed in our view, more towards the staying awake and doing more things, And so depression and anxiety, you can almost have any conversation with these kids. The minute it gets to bipolar, we've said a couple times, there's a whole different attitude about what those medications do. And so we've all had this, or we know somebody that has. They've had experience with psychotic break and what it's like to talk to somebody that's not in the room and things like that. And there is that stigma. Now, all of a sudden, what takes over is the personal stigma of, wait a minute, I'm not crazy. And so your question's a great one. Is how do we make ourselves more available? Or participate in the process more. This is how Kym and I do our Tyler talks, with a hat and a sweatshirt and a t-shirt, or maybe a jacket, depending on where it is, because we don't want them to see us as experts. We want them to listen to the story part of it. And so another common one is this, and maybe you guys can appreciate it. If you do get to a psychiatrist or psychologist, let's say a psychiatrist who does a great evaluation, you love how he or she is listening and gives you some treatment options, do them. Take more than 1 week's worth of the pills. If he says it takes weeks for this thing to come on, then it does. And we can very quickly point out an ACL's, full reconstruction, 12 months. You're doing therapy every day. You have to get a ride to go here. So if we're talking about suicidal ideation at the far extreme, and in Tyler's case, that had to come first, you got to be ready to do the work to get the benefit, if that makes sense. You can't show up once, they give you a pill and it's all over. For the most part, I'm not a doctor, I don't know. Maybe that's happened a bunch.
So we met a lot of psychiatrists, psychologists on this journey that we're on, right? And there's one that was, he was in the state of Washington, actually, Seattle area, worked with an NFL team, the Seahawks. He had put a plaque up, right? Was it?
Pete Carroll hired him as a performance psychologist early on. You know who we're talking about probably. But he does a great job. It's in one of his TED Talks or something where he talks about hanging the shingle out, counselor or psychiatry. He's not a psychiatrist, mental health or whatever. And nobody came, right? And then he changed it to add performance. This is 10, 15 years ago. Added performance. People showed up and said, I can't catch. The one he uses, I forgot how to catch the football. And they talked about his baby mama, his finances, his parents, his health issue. And he started catching the football again, and the kid ran around telling everybody that Doc was a genius. And his point of sharing that version of the story is we didn't talk about mental health at all, really. We talked about he just needed to unload on some of the very low level, what did he say, degree of affectation or whatever. But that finding your role in that wins every time. They're smart enough. They know you're a medical doctor. They know you have power of the prescription pad. And so there's a built-in, for I would say the most of them have a deference to your position and your education and your background. So they look at you more as an administrator because you're not you don't do as much of the talk therapy as they're used to the other people. Does that sort of make sense? And so it's again, it's a weird sort of dynamic, but I think there's so much respect that they tighten up on the things that they may want to may want to share until they feel more comfortable. But you've nailed it at the beginning, and I'll stop talking. The holistic approach or the multidisciplinary approach, you might have an athletic trainer at 5:30 in the morning hear the same thing from this kid that's very different than what she or he's heard for 4 years. We want to encourage them to talk and to share and follow whatever protocol, and right. And so we need everybody sort of on the same page. And that has to be done through the leadership of the athletic director's department and the head coach of that sport. And we've had too many kids pull us aside after and say, great talk, I'm sorry about Tyler, but if my head coach doesn't change, nothing's going. You said it to deaf ears. What we've noticed over 7 years, that's been replaced with, we've got this now, we've got a place to go, and we have a thing. So they start talking about resources. What Kym and I worry about is that part of that slice of the pie in a pie chart of the population like Tyler, that the resources aren't the issue. We just need to unhook you from whatever is keeping you from asking for the help you need.
And then that's probably that stigma, again, that just runs so high and so strong for our athletes, whatever level you're at.
You don't have ulterior motives. There's nothing you can do to them that'll hurt them, that'll make you better. The question you asked, the only answer I have is, if you can improve the trust, which I know requires access and all these other things, the trust with those guys, you'll win the whole locker room over. How you do that, chat would be better than me to tell you, but you're not asking. I didn't mean it like that. But that's a huge part of it. It's trust with us that we're going to tell them the truth about these stories. It's trust with their coaches that they're not going to be treated differently. And it's trust with the people that can do the most harm, which are their teammates, that they're not going to look the other way and think less of them for getting the same help. We don't say committed suicide anymore. You don't commit cancer. You don't commit ALS. I mean, God forbid. We'd tell them all the time, you'd have a bake sale. We'd find the best oncologist, whatever. We'll take it. We're not there yet with mental health, but we need to. These are our leaders. These are the kids that are going to make a difference, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Well, I feel so validated in hearing everything you just said. That
you didn't need us to do that. Yeah.
But it's true. This is absolute gospel from us. This is all we do.
From the athletic trainers being the front lines, the ones actually hearing the real stuff that's going on with the athletes and making sure that they're psychologically minded and can be able to handle some of the stuff and to feel comfortable then going up the chain, if you will. But also for a psychiatrist who's not really been in that realm, especially until the last few years, to be able to talk the talk, walk the walk, understand the culture. I mean, this is cultural competence at its basic level in order to work in the sports space. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Well, I'm looking at the time, and I really, really appreciate y'all's involvement today and spending some time with us. Where can folks go to learn more or get involved with Hilinskis Hope?
So our website is hilinskishope.org, not .com, because it's a nonprofit. We're on social media. It's all Hilinskis Hope. X. We're not on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. It's just we're coming at it, in a different way. Social media is great. That just wasn't where we really want to be. We want to be on campus. We want to be with those kids and the coaches and the administrators. And there's a lot of great things that come out of social media. It's just that it's not our scene. We're old.
And last question. If Tyler were here today, what would he say about the movement you've built in his honor?
We know what he would say. Aw, shucks. I'm embarrassed. Oh.
His favorite word was awesome. Mm-hmm. Everything was awesome.
Yeah.
So he might say, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, pretty awesome. But a little bit, humbled and a little bit embarrassed.
Guys, with all the data and at one point, there was a kid another quarterback on the team, struggling, very good quarterback. And I was talking to him about it, and the kid had just failed his final 3 tests. He's a good kid. He's doing great now and another school and stuff, but he was going to get into the transfer portal because he was tossed. I mean, there's no option. I remember talking to Tyler, and he was friends with this kid like he was everybody. And I said, hey, he probably, maybe smoked a little much, or he tend to party, whatever. And Tyler listened to the whole thing, and he said, yeah, you just never know what somebody's going through, Dad. And this was 2.5 years before he died. But I think that's the point, is that you don't. Kym and I are surprised by it. We'll say the same thing. Wow, I didn't expect her or him based on what he or she looks like or talks like or whatever to have this opinion or to have, you know what I like, you're faked out by stuff. And I don't know, to me, not knowing somebody's kind of full story, it sounds so easy and yet so incredibly difficult to be a little bit more kind, a little bit more, focused on others. They're so good at this stuff, guys, right? They're best friends for life. Some of these kids that play together, the women, just families at 20-year reunions and all this stuff, that's still coming. Like the point of today is you got to get through this as best you can, but as healthy as you can. They see it as a very real possibility that one of their friends will go, what's missing a little bit is their interest level in making sure they're not one of them, right? You're so good at helping others. And that's what you're seeing with a lot of the ambassador programs. We love it, captains programs and stuff, but it ends up being the same 30% of the kids that talk to each other. And so the ones we worry about just don't ride that way, and again, not better or worse, it's just the case. So how do we make that more accessible? And I think we have to keep, if it takes a big fat guy like me, to cry about his kid up on it, then we shouldn't have any stigma around something that's potentially life and death. It's serious. And guess what? If they come to you and say, hey, Doc Mark, I don't know how to bring this up, but here's what I see, and you're fine and you feel fine. I mean, we said, that's how much strength and courage did it take your teammate to call you out or worry about you? That's love too. So get comfortable. You guys are uncomfortable all the time on the field, getting your heads knocked off or running up and down or on the ice. Get comfortable that this can get a little icky, but if you guys are together, then the goal is simple. Once we're clear of it, we're good. You don't have to talk about it all day. It doesn't have to be a mission for anybody, but we want to make sure that you don't suffer in silence and fake us out either.
Yeah, to use Tyler's words, you guys are awesome. This is awesome. This is inspiring me.
Yeah.
I feel like I could talk for 2 more hours with the Hilinskis, and I think my takeaway, you said the word trust. What we want to do in sports mental health is decrease stigma, but increase trust. And that's getting to know somebody on a level. And I feel like just over the past hour, getting to know you all, we could talk about family and about faith and about where you come from for another 3 hours. But that builds that trust. And we want people to see psychiatrists as not some scary person in a room over here, but we're part of a team and a team that cares about you. So I'm super inspired to do that work. And thank you so much for being with us. Mark Allen, any closing words?
Yeah, I guess I probably need to start training for 3 marathons. Wow. Thank you all so much.
Boy, Mark.
It's just my May thing. It's just Tyler's birthday, Mental Health Awareness Month. His jersey, number was 3.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, okay. They started the 3 for 3 burpee challenge. Gosh, in 2019, burpees are tough. I'd rather do a burpee, right? So I was like, okay, I'll just do 3 marathons. And so there are special places. Last year I went by myself. It was in Italy, and I retraced steps that Tyler made when he was in high school, ran a marathon there. Always go to the state of Washington. So I have one this Sunday. And then we have a lighthouse. It's not our lighthouse, but it's in Kauai. He grew up going to this lighthouse. And we called it Nana's Lighthouse. My mom passed from ALS when she was just 60 years old. And so my Mark didn't know what to do with me. So we lived in California. It was easy to get there. So we just kept going to the same place. And we have pictures of Tyler, a little guy, until the year before he went to Washington State.
Throwing out lays,
and so
say a nice little prayer. Yeah.
When he passed, we said, okay, well, we're going to take some of them to the lighthouse. So I go back every May on his birthday. I do a makeshift marathon on his birthday there. And, just do my miles and think about him, and we throw out our lays. What are you going to do, right? Your son is gone. Your heart is broken. You got to keep living for the rest of the people in your lives. But we keep living for our student athletes too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Big thing. We can't tell you what it is. I'm sorry. We got a huge thing coming up at the end of the year. And I think you're going to love it. And so if there's any way Hilinskis Hope can help partner with you guys, please just reach out.
Oh, powerful words. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Okay. as you were saying.
I'm blown away. The Hilinski couple was fantastic. They are obviously passionate about their message, about their mission, about their son, and honoring him and helping athletes get better. Trust came out so many times. How do we, as anybody, not just mental health professionals around sport, interact with these athletes? It's got to start with trust and getting to know people on a real human level and be vulnerable with them. It's just an amazing message that they're spreading.
And I thought it emphasized the power of storytelling. And they went through something horribly traumatic, have turned it into a massive positive, able to connect with so many people and they're still grinding at this 6 years later. And they have, it appears that they have just as much energy and passion about it now. I was just, blessed to have them on the show and to, hear their story.
I guess one other takeaway I had was just, gosh, love your kids. And, you can't predict some of these things. We didn't talk much about the game of football, in particular about CTE and how that affects your brain health. But we do so much for our kids to help them perform and help them realize their dreams. Those moments we have with them are so precious. And I think sometimes it's that windshield time that we've talked about, that you're on the way to a game or from a game or practice, and it's that opportunity to talk to your kids, not just about the performance on the field, but how they're doing, how they're coping, who their friends are, what are those things that are passionate, that they're passionate about off the field. So, it's something that I think in the long term, again, we're just trying to bring holistic care to people and have to see them as people as well as athletes.
Yeah, that's great, Tommy. I mean, you're right. We didn't really talk about the concussion element that was going on with Tyler, or the fact that, his brain was that of a 65-year-old man after he passed. The CTE is real. It can affect mood changes, which was an important element to that story. But yeah, I think what we did go after, or we did talk about, which I think is important, is just how rapport building, connecting with people, athletes needing to feel safe when they're sharing very vulnerable parts about themselves, providing athletic departments and people who are working directly with athletes the language to be able to safely communicate these things and to receive feedback and then to know where to go with it, to provide good advice. I mean, that's so powerful, and that's why we're in this business. But I'm really excited about where this podcast journey is going to take us and for our next guest.
Amen.